Joining me now to discuss the Pope's passing and his legacy is Vatican analyst Gerard O'Connell. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. First of all, I want to get your initial reaction when you heard that the Pope had passed just hours after appearing publicly on Easter Sunday.
Well, I was in St. Peter's Square yesterday, and I saw him very, very close up, and I had the feeling he was driving around in his Jeep to say goodbye to the people. I really saw the look on his face. I've known him for 20 years, and I had the distinct impression that the end was nigh. And so when I woke up this morning and heard the announcement from the Cardinal Farrow, who is the Chamberlain, it confirmed what I had thought when I went to sleep last night. Interesting. So you feel on some level he knew? I don't know what he felt, but I had the sensation that he must have been aware that this was near the end. I mean, he came to the balcony where, as your report says, he was first presented to the world, and he was able to say very little. But he said, brothers and sisters, happy Easter. And then right at the end, his last words to the people were a blessing. He made, may God bless you. He blessed them. And then he drove around in the square, and there were a lot of people there. And everybody was delighted. But as I said, it was exactly 4 weeks ago that he came out of hospital. And the doctor said he has to have at least a 2-month period of recovery, of convalescence. He had just 4 weeks. Right in the middle of that recovery, he decided to be among the people. He wanted to die quickly, and that's what happened. He wanted to die as Pope, and that's what happened. And he wanted to die among the people, and that's effectively what happened. And he chose, he said, Easter is the celebration of life. He said it was the death of Jesus, but also the resurrection. It's the celebration of life. And he was celebrating life to the very end among the people as he said, when he was asked the other day, how are you living this Easter, given your illness, that you can hardly speak, your convalescence? He said, as best I can. And yesterday we saw the best he could give.
I note that you say he wanted to die as Pope, and during his illness, there had been some talk of him retiring. Based on your understanding, your relationship, knowing him over 20 years, why do you think that that was important to him, to die as Pope?
I was always convinced he would die as Pope, because he did not want his predecessor, Benedict XVI, resigned. If Francis, resigned, he would be starting a tradition that would be very difficult for his successors to break. By dying as Pope, there is no obligation on his successor to resign. The successor may decide this or not, but he was preventing something becoming a fashion, a fad, that the Pope at a certain point was not feeling so well and therefore should resign. So in a way, he protected the papacy by dying as Pope.
What was his impact on the Church? I know it's probably difficult to put into words when you look at his time as Pope, but what was his impact?
Enormous. He radically changed the Church. He said, we are meant to reach out to people, not to go about condemning, not to go about judging. It's not meant to be a judgmental group, the Church of Christ. It's meant to heal the wounded. He said to be a field hospital and to be a voice for the voiceless. Excuse me. And so I saw him. I think he has, I would say, changed the direction of the Church. He came from Latin America. The first Pope not European, or we had some from North Africa, but they were basically of European origin. He came from Latin America, brought a very different vision, because when you go to Latin America, you see there's much more joy in the church, there's much more concern for the poor, and the church is reaching the poorest of the poor. Francis was very clear about this. He was the son of immigrants, and he was the voice of the immigrants. We saw him speak to, in a letter to the American bishops, challenging profoundly the deportation of migrants in the way it's happening. He called it in an interview, in a press interview, he said, it's a disgrace what's happening. He said, these two are children of God, and we have to respect them in their dignity and in their cry for help. He was very strong about the dignity of people, and he never put himself above the most poor person in the world. He always tried to be at that way. He never lived in Buenos Aires as Archbishop. I saw he lived in a very small room, a very small little apartment in the curial offices. And in Rome, he didn't go to the papal palace to live, as his predecessors has done. He lived in a small 3-room apartment, a small study, a slightly bigger living room, and a small bedroom. That was how he lived almost 13 years as Pope. He was identifying with the poor of the world. And when he went around visiting countries, as when he visited Canada, he went in a small car. He said, you know, we don't need big cars to show who we are. He was a man of integrity. He was fearless. He spoke truth to power, and in a very strong way. And he did not fear what people thought about him. He felt he had to respond to God and to the poorest of the poor.
And that is reflected in his wishes for his funeral. He wanted a simple wooden coffin instead of the usual 3 coffins. He wanted an open casket, and he will be buried outside the Vatican.
Yes, he chose to be buried in St. Mary Majors, where I think 7 popes have been buried. But he wanted to simplify the funeral rite of popes, which was fairly pompous. He said, I want a funeral rite that's like that of an ordinary Christian. And so from the day he came onto the balcony of St. Peter's, where he was yesterday, to now where he will leave from St. Peter's on probably the weekend, he was very coherent in his style of life, in the message he was giving, and in the way he was living. So he wanted a simple funeral, and that is what he will have.
Gerard O'Connell is a Vatican analyst. Thank you so much, Mr. O'Connell, for taking the time to speak with us today and offer your insight and your memories of the Pope. We do very much appreciate your time.
Thank you.